Hey, I'm Lee Domang, serial entrepreneur, pastor, husband, proud father of 5 amazing kids, and boss, as they call me, to my 8 grandchildren and counting. Welcome to the Kingdom Builders Podcast. I meet with some incredible leaders, business people, and pastors to learn from their life lessons and wisdom as we seek to live a life of true fulfillment and eternal impact. So glad you're here.
Awesome. All right. Welcome back to the Kingdom Builder Podcast. It is February 2026. We're super excited. Can't believe it's already 2026, but just coming out of January, we closed out at our church, home church, Church of the Highlands in Alabama, and just finished up 21 days of prayer and fasting. It was absolutely amazing. And I hope if y'all's church is doing that, getting to be a part of it, really just kicking off the year strong. But I will say, there's been 3 times in my life I have seen you with a beard. And your beard in 21 days of prayer, you have not shaved it. To the listeners, he has a beard still to this day. It has come through 21 days of prayer.
Yes,
and
it has survived. It has survived 21 days of prayer. It has to be trimmed with number 2s in order to keep this little scruff going on, according to Laura, my wife. She's semi-approved. Yeah. She's moved from absolutely not to semi-approved. I approve this. And but I've had to keep it
doing
trimmed.
that. You don't want to do that Duck Dynasty beard?
No,
I don't know how my mom would feel about that. But
this is it. This is all you getting.
It was funny. I've had a few people be like, "Man, I see your dad with a beard. I've never seen that before." I'm like, "This is the 3rd time in my entire life I've seen that." Because in business, he was clean shaved every single day, wearing a suit. Oh, yeah. And as a just thought it was hilarious. But 21 days of prayer, how was it for you? I know there's been a lot of exciting things that came out of that for me. Gosh, amazing time with our family of what we're believing God for. But I just got to say, the number one thing I was craving was a Chick-fil-A sandwich with a cookies and cream milkshake.
Cookies and cream milkshake, Chick-fil-A, go large with waffle fries.
And that
I was also craving some Mexican food. And a little bit of Bluebell ice cream with a little hard shell on top.
Come on.
And maybe a Haagen-Dazs bar every now and then. But it was a great 21 days of prayer. It was really our celebrations. We move into the 25th anniversary of Church of the Highlands, which we just had that service, and it was just off the charts. And so it's just really amazing to see what God is continuing to do all throughout His church and the body of Christ. And so excited about today's episode. I think it's going to be one, it's not the most challenging one, but it is one that I have really put a lot of thought into, and it is so needed.
Yeah, no, super excited. So today, we're going to be jumping into the topic. If you were listening to our last month's podcast, we're talking about being courageous, taking heart, really diving into that. And we kind of touched on this topic that we're going to talk about today about what does it mean to be a man of God? We've had a bunch of people, and I know just as your son, we've had so many people over the years ask you because, I'm one of 4 boys, and all 4 of our boys are men of God. They love our family. They love their own families. They're all working, and they know the balance of hard work. They know, there's things that you did and instilled in us in a kid that, we're super grateful for today, but get questions asked all the time on this specific topic and things that you've trained us. But there's a lot of noise today on what people say. They throw around masculinity like it's a bad word. We threw it into chat just to ask, all right, what's the definition of masculinity? And it's actually qualities or attributes regarding as characteristic of men or boys. So, but we've made it this, some people talk about toxic masculinity, some people will talk about some of these other different types, but we wanted just to dive in from both you and I's personal stories of things that we've experienced, but we believe it's kind of an epidemic in the body of Christ today with most men. And there's almost like this ability that they need to be invited in or even have permission, because you have some people doing it not at all, and you have some people that are on the other side where it is toxic. And so just super excited to dive in that. But we also want to hear and acknowledge the fact of we are two men on this podcast.
Yes.
And so for our female audience and female listeners, if this is something that you want to talk about, let us know, because we could hop on a future podcast and bring in, my mom and my wife, and to even talk from their perspective. But today we're going to focus on the men. So we just wanted to
ladies, please give us grace.
Yeah, so we just kind of wanted to talk about that, and why, as a kingdom builder, the importance of that, and understanding that masculinity, it's not about power, but it's about it's a responsibility that you have. So why do you feel that today, in today's society, February 2026, from what's going on in the world, why do you feel like this is such an important topic to not dance around, but to talk about?
Yeah, I think one is you can't complain about what you tolerate. And I think that there's societies just, for whatever reason, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of crazy, there's a lot of challenging things that are going on. But I think that there's a core issue that it falls back into this, even if you call it a demasculation of men. I think the word masculinity has been tainted by people who have abused people. By people who have used that or tried to assert themselves in a manipulative, controlling, dominating manner, which is totally not the heart of God, which is totally unbiblical, and that's not the masculinity. Actually, that's weakness, if you really peel the onion back on that. But the masculinity I'm wanting to talk about today is something I think that there's a massive vacuum. I do think you hit on something, Harrison, when you said it's almost like people feel like they need to be invited in or given permission.
Yep.
I think two things need to happen. I think number one is they need to understand what the Bible says about it. Mm-hmm. So what does God say about being a man of God or being a masculine leader?
And let me just say one thing real quick, why that's so important, what the Bible says about it. I have heard time and time again my whole life, when you ran for Senate, when you did some of these different, business person of the year, best dressed Louisiana, when you had some of these different things in your life where you've had a platform that God's given you to people ask you questions, they're always asking what your opinion is on something. And I have heard you years say this, if God's already spoken on it, I don't have an opinion. My opinion really doesn't matter. I go with what God's word says.
Yeah.
And so I think that's even something that so many people are trying to speak their opinions. Yeah. And the humility in that is how I believe God's called us to be as men of God.
Yeah.
So just even framing that up of why it's so important on the biblical.
Yeah. Well, one is you talk about if God's already spoken on an issue, if he's already given his commentary or what's to be done, even if I have an opinion or even a way I feel, if it's contrary to what God's telling us or what God's saying, then it really doesn't matter. It's almost like you got to get over it. You've got to grow out of that. And I think we need to give young men, we need to model for young men what godly masculinity looks like, number one. Number two is not only modeling it, but even for older or more, or let's say adult men, I think that we need to show them and invite them in, give them permission to be the man of God that he's called them to be. And I had, my mom and dad, your grandparents, when I was in the third grade, went through a horrible divorce. And that was very traumatic as a kid growing up because you didn't understand why. You were just like, one's not there anymore. Yeah. And even though you'd see them once a month or whatever, and they did the best they could, honestly. They did the best they could. And I'm very grateful, for them. But I look back on that and there was one thing they did for me. They sent me to a summer camp as a kid in Brevard, North Carolina, called Camp Deerwood. And this is the camp owners passed away just a couple years ago, but he kept that camp open for years. And the camp was based upon, if you took you would think today's time it'd be a little militant, but it was where a boy could really be a boy. And they modeled not only athletics, it was athletic focus. You had the mandatory wrestle, you had the mandatory box, you had to you arrive the day you get there, you're tested on 10 events, and then 4 weeks later when you leave, you're tested on those same 10. And it was amazing to see the weight loss, the physical fitness, but what came with that was a confidence.
Yep.
And what came with that was an appreciation. What came with that was a respect. And you had the hospital corner your bed. You had to put your shoestrings inside your shoes. I'm 6th grade, 7th grade. You had cabin inspection. Funny thing with cabin inspection is if you got below is 1 to 10. If you got below an 8 more than once, the camp counselors will come and flip you out your bunk at 4 a.m., give you a flashlight, and say, "Hey, go to the French Broad River, get a maple leaf, and bring it back." And so you'd see at 4 a.m. and these kids, they would be running out with their flashlights. They'd go get a leaf, and this was the kicker: if you didn't know what a maple leaf was and you got the wrong leaf, you had to go back.
That's funny. And I don't know how some parents would handle that today with that thought.
But
my baby needs to sleep.
Yeah, no. But it was these kids, and we still have a group of us that have reunions every year.
And this was in the 70s. Have a group text.
Yeah, we have a group text called Deerwood Nation. And so what it did is it created and it was modeled this healthy masculinity, and but it fostered that. And that marked me. Well, not every kid gets that opportunity, number one. I never spent a summer home for 10 years.
Wow.
And because I was always up there. So then I learned in high school, I was employed there as a junior counselor.
It was an investment your parents made.
And as a 15, 16-year-old, we were running that camp. We were handling all the upkeep of the camp. We were handling all of the food service, 3 meals a day. We were the potmen, waiters, dishwashers, supervisors, which were the head cooks. We sat down with Cisco representatives, planned the meals for that whole camp session. Jeez. We were 16, 17 years old doing that. Well, what it taught, so the owner of that camp entrusted that.
And y'all loved it.
Yes, but you know what? It was an honor, and we loved it. You know how much I made that whole summer? $300. And sometimes less than that, because you'd get fined if you made certain mistakes. So if for every minute you were late, you had $1 fine. So it taught you punctuality. Every time that you would make, like one time I got fined because I didn't do my rolls right, and they didn't rise. I didn't take them out for the yeast to make them rise and everything else. So I got fined $5 because my rolls not doing that. And another one was shirking your job responsibility.
I will say that also teaches someone stewardship because had you not, like, you wouldn't care if the rolls, all right, we'll just go get some more.
Well, but we had all these duties, and so I'm running tractor equipment. I'm doing baling hay, weed eating. I'm sweeping a gym. We're dealing with all of these from the food service side. And what was amazing is we also had certain rules as junior counselors. And in those rules, we had a secretary who was a second-year junior counselor. And he would keep the fine book. We had a book that listed out with acronyms about 50 things that you could get fined for. SJR, shirking job responsibility. We would call another one for being a DA. I'm not going to say what that was, but you can let your mind run with it. And so you'd get fined. And so at the end of camp, all that fine money would go in a pot. And the owner of the camp would take the senior leaders, so it would be a third-year JC, and take them all out to a steak dinner. And so they could eat steak dinner and stuff on all of the fine money.
They were keeping track of that.
Yeah, they kept track of that. And so we still today have that fine book, and we went through it. And it was just hilarious seeing some, but it taught us, like one guy, he was abusing one of the camp vehicles, and he burned out in the gravel. So the owner of the camp, who was over all of this, and he didn't, I don't know if he had 5 lives or whatever, but 4 clones, he was just there. It could be 3 a.m, you make a mistake somewhere. He was just there. He just knew it. And so he carried a pencil in his ear and a little sheet of paper, and he'd write down when he'd see stuff. So he could be off in the distance watching and seeing something, and he would catch you in what we called court. So every Tuesday night we had court. And all the things that you could go before. You could defend yourself to your peers, the other JCs, and we would have court. And then the JCs would decide what that final fine would be. And so you're thinking, okay, well, I better be compassionate to this guy because he's going to be voting the next time, I do something. All of that created this discipline. But like when, I never forget this guy was, I think it was called, we called him Paul. He was taking out the trash and he was burning out in the vehicle. So we called him, his name was Paul McGuire from North Carolina. And so we called him Trash Haul Paul. And so Trash Haul, everybody had a nickname. So Trash Haul burned out in this
What was
Jeep.
your nickname?
I'm not going to say. But and so he basically, what he did was he burned out about 10 feet. And so his fine was $1 per foot. So they're out measuring.
That's funny.
And but it was created this culture of brotherhood. It created this culture of there's consequences for your actions. It created this discipline, but also that camp owner had to trust some teenage boys and empowered us and took the time to pour into us. He said this, he goes, there's no gray area at Deerwood. It's black and white. You to cross the line, you pay a price. And so while that was very strict, it created something inside of me every summer that was a reset moment. Because I think boys need to be, it's kind of like in today's society, we have boys in classrooms, we say, you have no more recess. When I was in school, man, I was running, sweating, outside, running around, very active.
Multiple times a day.
Right, multiple times a day. And see, today, they've taken all that away. And so you want them to sit down, be quiet, behave, and you're wondering why they're all jacked up, ADD, having, different issues that they're dealing with. And I just think that we've lost our way in creating a place for a boy to be a boy and learn how to be a man.
And letting it be okay to be a boy. Like giving permission to where, gosh, that's just making me think about the times when my kids come home from school, my boys are just so wound up and they're ready. And I get frustrated because, they're running, wanting to go outside, wanting to do this and whatever it may be. I'm like, it's so cold outside. And they're like, we don't care. And they're just wanting to do something, but to even give them permission to letting them be boys versus trying to correct them for the wildness versus fostering that. Yeah.
Well, the camp finally closed, and I'll tell you this, and then we can move on because I think it's a great story. So Bill Mays, who owned that camp, well, he was a Golden Glove boxer, All-American basketball player, just incredible with construction, built his own home, built a gymnasium, built most of all the cabins on camp. He did all that himself. So he was a really, really unique guy and really special. And so when he closed the camp, he built out a fitness center on the beautiful grounds in North Carolina, built out a fitness center, but for old people. And I think he had to be 50 or older to join it. And so I remember going and seeing him, and he's taking them through what he called PC, which is not Pastor Chris, like we say. It's PC, which was physical coordination. And he would take you through this. So he has these circuits and things that he built, like circuit training. Yeah. And he would take these older people to try and help them to stay fit and everything else. And I remember driving up and surprising him one day. And he's out there, and he's every bit of 6'5", I guess, and still lean, still was in shape. And he's in his 70s, probably close to 80. And he's outside wearing this 70-year-old man out. And I drive up, and he is all in his grill. And I'm like, and we called Bill TM. That was the acronym for the man. And so we called, I said, TM. And he looks back at me, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. And he looks back at me, and he's back at this guy. And what he's telling the guy, he's kicking the guy off the property for not showing up. He goes, you don't want to be healthy. This is a guy paying a monthly membership. And he's like, you don't want to be healthy. You don't want to take care of yourself. I see you once a month. Get on out of here, Bob. And he's kicking this guy off his property. And the guy's like, I know, Bill. I know I'm trying to get better. He goes, no, come back when you really want to commit. And he kicks the paying customer off of the property. And then, but he was just a special, special man.
Man of conviction.
Yes, he was a man of conviction. And so I think we need more men of conviction, not domination, not this arrogant attitude of I'm better than everybody else or everybody's got to submit unto me and in a controlling, manipulative way. That's not what we're talking about. But I do believe we need to have men that step up, have permission to lead. Because you know what? I think most men inside of them, and if y'all miss everything on this podcast, don't miss what I'm going to say now. I think men have an area of their heart that is crushing to them because they don't know what to do, especially in society. And they know they need to respond, but yet they either don't know how or they just get faint-hearted. And the Bible deals with faint-heartedness in Scripture. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 8, it's a general talking to the army. And it says this, it says, "Who is the man who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him return to his house immediately, lest he infect the rest of the men with his faint-heartedness." And Coach Bill McCartney, who coached Colorado Buffaloes, the national championship in the Hall of Fame, and he told me that one time. He said, "Son," he goes, one man can make a difference, but you can't be faint-hearted. And I think society has created this faint-heartedness, and we've called it, oh, well, that's just being mean, or that's being intolerant, or and it's not. Yep. Not when because if it's sin, regardless of what I think, regardless of what I say, and I'm not going to tolerate I wouldn't allow, I have a saying, Harrison, that never negotiate. I'm not going to negotiate or have a discussion with a Goliath. That's good. David took out Goliath.
Yep.
He was beyond you don't negotiate with the devil. You don't sit there and negotiate with a Goliath in your life. You got to take out a Goliath. Yep. And I'm talking spiritually, and so what are the Goliaths in your life? And you're going to need to address those. And so if you hear anything I'm saying today, is that you have to step out of that, and it's going to require courageous faith. We talked about that earlier. Yeah. It's going to require you stepping out of your comfort zone. But I think when one life does it, I think it has this catalytic effect of replication and contagiousness that rubs off on others, and I think other people will follow it. It's like, think about when you've seen a strong leader. Think about when you've had a great coach in life. Yeah. Or who was fair. Think about when you've had a great teacher that challenged you at the very core. I think of Miss Thompson, who helped you in school, and she was like, she didn't fully understand you, but she believed in you. Yeah. And you graduated probably because of her. And because she went the extra mile in that. And so where are those people? Where are the people that are going to go and sit there and say, you know what, not on my watch. Yep. I'm going to go, and you may not have kids and you're listening, but you know what? There's plenty of young kids that need to have your influence. Yep. And I think what's going to happen is this fulfillment piece that's lacking in many people's lives. I think it's really tied to that because we have forfeited what God has called us to do, and we've settled. And there's nothing more miserable than someone who is trained for battle that has to basically not have a battle to fight.
Gosh, that's so good. Now, thinking back through the different coaches, the different teachers, Coach Jorgensen, track, football, training, just, gosh, and the things that they instilled and believing, and there's so many different myths when it comes to this topic of masculinity, and people thinking, all right, being a man of God means emotionally closed off, that I'm strong, I can't cry, I can't do this, I have to do it on my own. Like, this is the amount of times I've heard guys say, this is my mountain, or this is my thing to climb, this is what I have to do alone. And I'm like, years ago, I remember talking with you, and I thought, really, I was thanking you, but we were flying to an event, and we were in the airport, and God gave me this picture of skyscrapers, and of how there's low, mid-rise, and high rises, and how so many people feel like, I feel like the devil's used this as an ability to distract men from being all that God has. Is like, masculinity isn't saying you have to do it alone. There's some people that are building things alone, and in their lifetime, they can only build a low rise or a mid rise. Very few people can build a high rise all by themselves. Yeah. But it's all about how you replace yourselves. And I was telling them that the picture was standing upon what someone else, a spiritual father, an actual father. And I was thanking you because I remember that conversation. I was like, thank you for creating space for me to be able to stand on a building to keep building further. Because if we do that, that's where the generational of you should be able to, you've said this before, you should be able to see further, go further.
Yeah, when you're
faster.
standing on someone, think about this, just the picture of standing on someone's shoulders. That's a very common quote. All right, you're standing on the shoulders of others. Well, you should see further. You should see, bigger because you're on their shoulders. And so we should celebrate that. And even as the one who is holding up those people on your shoulders, you should celebrate the fact that hopefully they're going to see further, go faster, all of those things.
But and then in that, people feeling like you touched on this, can't call sin. There's having to tiptoe and dance around because I'm a Christian. I can't, and I'm like, I have people in my life that will call my stuff because they love me and they want me to succeed. But we've kind of twisted that in, this alpha male personality that I can't serve. I have to be served. And
and that's contrary to that's the exact opposite of what Jesus called us to do. And it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
No, you become a leader when you serve. You become strong. You become the man of God you're supposed to be, as a servant. But it's not, you're not being, what's the right word? You're not being manipulated. You're not being, I've got to serve or I've got to tolerate. How about, we talk about toxic masculinity. How about just toxicity
in general
in the way people live? How about the toxicity in sin? That in all of us, the Bible says that all of us fall short.
Yep.
I have sin in my life. I've got to confess every day. Lord, that thought, that quick, rude, maybe quick comment. How about this? That gossip. It's sin. Sin is sin to God. And so for me, I've got to sit there and say, all of us. There was a saying. I told someone this yesterday. I was like, all of us are one step from stupid.
Yep.
And so that's a choice that we have to make. And so each and every day, I'm going to make a choice. You know what? Jesus was strong, but yet he was gentle.
Yep.
He was bold, but he was very compassionate. But also he was authoritative, but sacrificial. Jesus was the one who was complete love and compassion, but yet he did go into the temple and he flipped over tables and he used a whip to drive people out. Imagine that in today's climate. Oh gosh, he would be. They would be trying to cancel him, and I mean, this guy's going in there, and he's gotten the things that were desecrating the temple of God. Are you kidding me? And so, but that's the Jesus that's in the New Testament. There's plenty of stories in the Old Testament of masculinity, but Jesus in the New Testament exhibited this compassion and love for people, but yet he was this massively strong leader.
Like his strength came from his humility almost even too. And, in Mark, I have this verse right here, Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And, in John, it talks about how Jesus washed the disciples. That was his leadership through service. So I'm like, you want to tell me the pillar example of Jesus is the model of what masculinity should look like? I mean, he was a carpenter.
Yep.
Brother worked with his hands.
Yeah.
He did. I mean,
carpentry's violent.
It is aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's aggressive. Yeah. It's not he did hard labor. He sweated every single day that he worked. But yet he was also gentle and just as those things you said. But really it came, through his strength and humility. But we have kind of wanted to touch on for our listeners kind of just 5 pillars of what a man of God is. And we want to interject some stories and some things like that. But as I was talking with the team, as we were talking through some different things, I was like, really, when you look at Scripture, there's 5 different pillars. And, we want to be practical, but also helping just to shape this and in some different stories. Because some of these, I'll just be honest, some of these pillars, I'm like, I got to work on.
Yeah.
The first pillar, it's talking about spiritual leadership. It's talking about, as a man of God, you're called to take responsibility for your own walk. This is stuff that we know, but also if you're married and if you have children, you're responsible for the walk of your family. There's something you talked about and you touched on last month in January's podcast about how one of the number one things that you help business people, successful business people, is to pray with their spouse.
Yeah.
That is an area that I have to get better because it can be awkward. And I mean, I've shared that with you multiple times.
They can
with
run a $100
Samantha.
billion company, but they're intimidated as all get out to pray with their wife. They just don't know how.
Yeah.
And they're scared of it.
And so that spiritual leadership, and, a lot of times, real masculinity is not outsourcing your faith. Man, the amount of times when I was, maybe a youth pastor or I've been in ministry, there's a lot of people that would say, fix my kid, help me with this. And I'm like, ultimately, I'm grateful for you in that because I was never pawned off to somebody else that was spiritually strong. You took it accountability for yourself. Say, no. I'm responsible for Harrison, Winston, Grayson, Ashton, Isabella, and I'm going to lead that way. And you weren't perfect, but you did. But it was God gave me one dad. He gave me you, and you chose to step into that. When I see a lot of different men, they can be timid by that, or they're like, I'm not a theologian. I'm not a pastor.
Yeah,
you never once.
None of that matters. None of it. You don't need the theologian. What you do need, you don't need perfection. You don't need the perfect recipe. You just need intentionality. And you show up every day. And you know what? And you own when you make mistakes, you own it and you move on. And what you do is you also, when you do that and actually move on, is you're modeling for your kids, oh, okay, when I make a mistake, I go to the Lord, repent, or if I go to a person that I did something wrong to, I ask for their forgiveness, and then I keep moving forward. And so we try to cultivate not a perfect environment for our kids, but we definitely wanted to cultivate. We didn't want our kids, we didn't want to have families in divorce dynamics. We made our decision that we're going to do everything we can, not only to stay together in husband and wife, but to create an environment for our kids. I mean, when y'all were little, at a very young age, y'all learned how to work. You learned how to clean. There was a responsibility that you had. I had y'all doing calisthenics. I had y'all when you had to running around the house with flashlights at night before you went to bed.
When we got in trouble, first off, there was always Domain Family Fitness before bed because we were wild. We needed, there was 4 boys, and so we would be doing push-ups, sit-ups. We would be doing jumping jacks, burpees, all these things we would do together before bedtime. And we just thought it was a part of life, but it was because my parents were trying to wear us out before sleep.
Yeah.
My mom and dad talk about that. But when we would get in trouble, I'll never forget the mom telling the story of the lady that lived next to us in Baton Rouge. It was a 4-acre tract was the property, kind of like a big rectangle. And when we would get in trouble, we would have to run. Whoever got in trouble would be running. And the other one would hop on a four-wheeler and they'd be keeping pace, making sure the other siblings ran. A lot of times we all got in trouble, so we'd all be running. So we'd be crying, we'd be pushing, keep running. All right, hey, you talk back to your mom, that's a lap. And a 4-acre lap, like it's, or hey, you're gonna go do sprints,
especially at night
when you got flashlights. And my mom tells this story the best, but the neighbor one time was sharing how she was, I can't believe y'all are moving. I'm just gonna miss those little boys. I've never seen little boys that love to run so much, and their other siblings are cheering them on the 4-wheeler, and I'm like, well, we just let that go, but it helped shape, and I'll never forget. I mean, even in high school, you had us when we weren't in football season, it would take us 6 to 8 hours, depending on how many siblings we could get to help. 6 to 8 hours, me and Grayson, of doing yard work. We would mow the grass. We would edge the fence. We would edge rocks. We would go around the pond. We would go back with a blower, have to do clear lines, and you'd inspect it after to make sure it was done appropriately. He gave us the tools, and I'm grateful for it because I also learned how to do stuff. I'm going through all these different stories. When you first got your 442 and we're in the garage, we're taking the headers off, changing all that. I learned how to work on a car just by holding the flashlight. Yeah. And to all the kids out there, how hard it is to hold a flashlight for your dad sometimes. The fear and trauma that can come holding that flashlight as a little kid. But man,
come on right here. What are you doing?
I know, because you're holding heavy weight, and now I know what that's like in my own way. Me and my son, Gray, we had our first experience of holding the flashlight when I was working on the car a couple of months ago, and it was hilarious. It's like a deer in headlights. He's 6, but
he'll remember it.
But he'll remember it, and I'm forever grateful for that spiritual leadership. And I remember, so many memories are coming back, but I remember that blue and white plaque a little ceramic plaque that y'all had in our house, and it was you keep it above the pantry, and it was Joshua. It had Joshua 24:15 on it. For me and my household, we will serve the Lord, and it was always a constant reminder of who we were. And I don't know where that little plaque is. It's a little outdated, so I don't know if mom, mom may have redone some stuff, but something that I just keep thinking back how it was a core member, a core piece of it. And so I would say even too, there's going to be some single moms and some families and some guys that, you may be in your 30s like me, and you didn't grow up with a man of God that really instilled these principles into you, and you were raised by a single mom. And just shout out to all of our single moms out there, like the heroes. Like, you really are a hero. And you may, we would never want this to be conviction to anyone to feel like, oh, well, I wasn't raised that way, I could never do that. But God makes up for what we lack. He can make up for the things. He can send people in your life. So as I'm just even thinking about that on the spiritual leadership, what would we say to those, to that audience?
Well, I think one is, even if you didn't have a father who was present, or your father, you have no relationship, deceased, whatever the situation may be, is that God, your relationship with Christ, fills that void, number one, in that role. But I do think whatever the heartache was, and whatever the situation that you had to walk through, as difficult as it was, you've got to own the fact that you're going to change that.
Yeah.
You've got to own the fact that you're the generation, you're the one who's going to make the changes that's going to change the entire trajectory of your family now. So, young man, 13, 14-year-old, you fill those shoes. You be that. You start modeling and being that. And a great place to do that is at a great, healthy local church where you can get involved in students ministry, where it's not just all about, eating pizza, where there's some spiritual growth, and, there's gatherings. And I mean, you did that for many, many years. You and your wife, Sam, did that for many years. Still, she's doing it today, but focusing on students, but to develop them. But I think it is right for us to put a responsibility on, yes, you may not have had that, but you can grow into being that now. Yep. And let's help them do that. A single mom, my heart does go out for that single mom, to be able to, walk in carrying both of those loads. I would say, as a single mom, the best thing you can do is get your child in a incredibly faith-filled environment, like a great youth group at church that's led by a pastor and a youth pastor whose life is worth your son or daughter emulating. Okay? So they displaying that. Not just they're acting as a daycare. Not just, I'm taking care of your kids and being a nanny right now. No. Are they instilling in them the principles that you would want in a young man? And I think that's that responsibility. And but my heart does go out, because it's got to be very, very tough.
And even to the men right now that are listening, that was their reality, grew up in that. I'm even thinking about some different friends I have in my life over the years. Even when I was a youth pastor for 5 years, I'd have students say, I don't know how to, I have buddies that don't know how to hang a TV, that don't know how to hang pictures on the walls, that don't know how to rotate tires on a car. There was a friend of mine in general, he lost his father. And he said, he was like, my dad, I never had a chance to learn how to change brakes. And he was like, and right now I'm finishing school, all this stuff. And he was like, the brake job was ridiculous. I had him come over to the house and we changed out brake pads, all this stuff in my garage. And I've always took it as an opportunity, because I feel like it's something was instilled in me and taught that I have to pass on. So I'll invite, that was one of the best ways that I would help with people. But the thing is, if I didn't know, I could have never helped them. These people, so I want to talk specifically to the people that maybe feel like, hey, that was my story. These guys approached me, came up to me to saying, hey, would you ever, they saw that I may have been a little different or they saw something, so they wanted to be, hey, how can I be around? And they would ask me kind of stuff. Hey, do you know how to do this? Do you know how, whatever it may be? And I've had buddies like, I'll pay you to come hang this TV. I said, no, I'll come over and I'll show you how to do it. So and then teach you.
Yeah.
And so you
But
can
I
be
never
your other
gave
one.
you guys a choice. Your choice in school, your mom and I never gave y'all a choice in this area. Your job was delivering on your grades.
Mm-hmm.
And you either needed to be in sports,
Yep.
in some type of arts, which could be music, whatever, or you were going to get a job. And you had to maintain that. And so you couldn't, that was your job. So as an athlete, you had to give it all you got. The wins and losses were irrelevant, but you were going to show up for practice. You were going to be a part of a team. You were going to hold your grades in line. And so you had to do that. That was your responsibility in our transaction of family. It's like, no, I'm going to work every day, got a roof over your head. You didn't have to worry about putting gas in that car. It just happened. And so all of those things. So there was this exchange. Mm-hmm. And I think there are conditions that I think parents have to put. And Jesus has conditions. Give and it shall be given unto you. Confess and you will be forgiven. To see what I'm saying? And so there's these.
Sometimes we try to make everything upward. Everyone gets a trophy. I want to be fair. If one kid gets this, the other kid gets this. When not everyone's the same.
No.
All three of my kids are drastically different.
Right.
Just like me and my siblings.
You may have one that's an athlete. You may have one that is an artist. You may have one that's a musician. You may have one that's a scientist. That's it's tech related. And you got to cultivate that in them.
Yep.
But, as the old Deerwood saying is, God's given us our mind and our body to develop both to the best of our ability. And I think you do need to institute physical fitness, mental fitness. One of the greatest things I think a parent can do, and if I would say it's a regret, but I wish I would have facilitated even some of my kids pushed a little harder to stick with learning piano, to stick with learning, you see what I'm saying? Or reading more books. Now, Bella, she was an avid reader. Winston, avid reader. Grayson, reader more for school.
He didn't say anything about me on the reading front.
No, but you like.
I loved being outside, cars, sports. I love to sweat.
But you were all different.
Yeah.
And so you've got to cultivate that and mind the goal that's in your kids. And by letting them feel the consequences. And then periodically, when you did make a mistake, sometimes we gave a complete grace card.
Yeah.
Where you were that was few and far between, but we did do that, where you didn't have to endure the consequences. And the reason for that is we were just trying to say, you know what? I look at my own life and I think about the mercy that God has shown me in my life.
Yep.
Mercy over mercy. I've gotten so much and been blessed tremendously versus what I should have got.
Yep.
And I want to keep that posture. And so I think when someone is operating in a healthy masculinity, they keep the posture of being thankful. They keep the posture of being grateful. And they keep the posture of extending gratitude. Yep. And they have integrity. And integrity is something that you choose. You make those choices. Sometimes if you slip, you make the wrong choice, or you did something that, man, it was a little shade. I've got to go make that right. And then you own them and you move on.
Yep.
And God's saying, when you do that, I don't remember that anymore. That's what he's saying. So when you guys would make a mistake, when you guys would do something as a child or whatever, and you owned it, it never got brought back up and thrown in your face. And you can't do that.
No, it's so good. And that's honestly our second pillar is integrity, and talking through how important it is as a man of God to be the same man in public that you are in private. Same in private as in public, and vice versa. That too many people I see nowadays feel like they have to be a certain way versus who God's called them to be. I told you a year ago I was at a conference, and even on the pastoring front, there was a pastor there that shared, and I thought this is way even beyond pastors. He said, I'm so tired of hearing pastors complain about the sheep in their church. And he goes, because most of the time, most pastors aren't the same, or he was saying, this guy in particular, he goes, he has a hard time being the same person in public that he is in private. And he goes, so he attracted sheep that God never called him to pastor. So of course you don't like the sheep that you have, because you're pastoring someone else's sheep, and your sheep are out there wandering.
That's strong. Yeah.
And I even thought, as a, you know, as a marketplace minister, as a man in that doesn't work at a church, so many times we can kind of, you know, we have our different worlds. I've heard you talk about this. You have the business lead, you have the pastor, the church lead, and so there's these competing of worlds sometimes, that integrity is so important, to be able to keep your word, to honor your commitments, to be able to, you know, choose character over, you know, the convenience of because a lot of times choosing character, like, it can be hard. Like, it can be like, it
can be hard. It's sometimes an easier way to not do it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but really, this is something, an area, you know, we talk about this, you know, Psalms. He who walks blamelessly and keeps his oath, even when it hurts. And whoever can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. There's scriptures throughout the Bible, but this is an area I feel like I'm very strong in from you. I think this is an area that was generationally passed down, because you are the same in private, you are the same in public. I've never seen a different way to live. I've never had a different vantage point of, no, what you see is what you get. And it's not I don't use that as a way of like, oh, you have to accept me this way. This is how I am. No. There's a humility in it and a grace on it. But specifically, Proverbs 27, it says, the righteous man walks in his integrity, and blessed are his children after him. And not trying to make it super emotional, but I'm a blessed man because you chose to live this way. And I'm a blessed man after you, and my kids are going to be blessed because you've chosen to be that way. My sons are only going to know how to be who God's called them to be, because I'm not going to create space for them to have to feel like they have to be certain different ways. That we're going to keep our word. If we say something, this is what we're going to do, that we're going to always choose character, because that's who Dominguez are. It's one of our core values as a family. So I wanted to honor you in front of the people that we really are blessed. And for every listener, I know for me, I want my kids one day to be able to say that, but not just say it, but mean it, and actually see that the righteous walks in his integrity, and blessed are his kids, that they see that as a goal, as they see that as something, because it's definitely, integrity is something that in 2026 is, it's almost a bendable topic that people say, in the sense of, it's all about my truth.
Yeah, integrity integrity was never meant to be pliable.
Yes, and people try and treat it or make it bending to whatever
it is or it's not.
Their interpretation of integrity.
Yeah, it is or it's not. So
and it leads to, integrity leads to the next one, which is responsibility. And responsibility, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but owning your outcomes, taking responsibility for, I'm a man of God. It's there's an element of this of, I saw a video maybe last week. It was a husband and wife walking down the street. It made the news, and the person got robbed. The guy came up to take his wife's bag, and the guy backed up and stood up against the wall, and the wife is sitting there wrestling with this robber, attack her, and she's punching him, trying to get away from him, and the guy stood there the whole time. And I thought the responsibility, I was like, that guy, the demasculinity of that moment, of that video, that I'm like, it's just so different than I'm like, it's my job as a man of God to protect my wife, to protect my friends, but also anyone in that scenario. Yeah. If I walk by someone who's getting their bag taken, and some other guy, and so what made the news was that this other guy came in, and he goes, no, I couldn't stand there and just watch this girl be taken advantage of and be beat by these guys for her bag. And so it was a visual that just popped in, but the responsibility of real masculinity does not avoid it. It doesn't avoid responsibility. It doesn't shirk responsibility, as to reference what you did. It embraces it.
Yeah.
And so what would you say on the pillar of responsibility as a man, like if you had to shape up, how has it just affected your life? Because you are one of the most responsible people I know.
I wasn't growing up I was not. I had levels of responsibility, but I think being put in different environments and honestly, when I became the pivotal moment for me in responsibility was when I was 19 years old and I was living at home, and it was in between semesters because I didn't do good in school, and I had been out all night, and I remember coming home and it was late and I slept in, and my dad woke me up in the afternoon. Okay, afternoon. And he looked at me and he kind of popped me upside the head in a loving way, and he said, "Santa Claus is dead. It's time for you to get out." And when he did that,
Santa's dead.
for 6 months, I hated him. And when he turned 90 this past year, I got to honor him in front of 250 people. And I told the story of that it was, and I said it, this was the number one greatest thing he ever did for me.
Wow.
Was when he told me Santa Claus was dead. And he's never given me a penny since that time at 19. So when parents want to know and how to deal with kids and everything else, some of you need to tell your child Santa Claus is dead.
Wow.
And it forced me then, Harrison, from don't miss this, from irresponsibility to now responsibility. And it was 6 months of hell. But it created then a discipline of a work ethic in me that still remains today. Because nobody owes me anything at all. Hard work, which is a missing ingredient in life, hard work is a holy calling. I think God wants us to be hard workers. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a blessing in that. But I had to learn responsibility by, every area of support was taken from me. And was taken from me because I was irresponsible. But it forced me to grow up in a way that taught me responsibility. And today I'm grateful for my father. And you know what he told me years later? When I asked him, I was like, "Man, Santa Claus is dead. That was tough, Dad." He goes, "That was the single hardest decision I've ever made as a parent."
Wow. Because
you were never disrespectful. I was just irresponsible. I was always kind. I always showed lots of love. But I was irresponsible. And he said that was the toughest decision I've ever made.
Yeah. No, 100%. Being, creating space for that as a parent when you could just easily help your kid.
Yeah.
Gosh, I know how many times I've heard you reference that or talk about that. I got my own Santa Claus is dead when I got married.
Yes, you did.
I'm getting ready to leave. I'm like, "All right, Dad, we're heading out. We're about to do the walkout." Just
it was your wedding day. This was at the reception.
No, this is at the reception. They're literally making a tunnel with sparklers and all this stuff for us to go through. And I'm hugging him, and he goes, "All right, Santa Claus is dead." I said, "What is that? What? What do you mean?" He goes, "You're about to find out, son. I love you. You have a great time." And I was like, "Okay."
So that Amex is gone.
Yeah, he said, "I canceled your Amex this morning," and I was like, "Oh, praise God." I'm like, and I'll never forget getting in the car. My brother drove us away, and I was sitting there to Sam, and I was like, "Grayson, Dad just said Santa Claus is dead. What does that even mean?" He's like, I don't know. And I'm like,
you found out though.
So, which is great, but honestly grateful for the responsibility, because I don't think I would have what I have now, or God would have trusted us what he's entrusted Sam and I both with, if we not had that. So a lot of my friends, they're just figuring life out where we're working, we're doing this. 'Cause I'm like, I didn't have the choice. I had to pay for my house. I had water bill, power bill. So it forced me to wait tables while I was finishing school. It forced me to do some of these other things. Now, I don't know how the Santa Claus is dead thing's going to happen to my little sister, Isabella Grace.
That's a different discussion.
You're like, something Santa's got 9 lives.
Santa
apparently.
lives.
Santa lives. So, but yeah, no, definitely it's something that just to encourage on the flip side of that, there's something powerful in that, but
you want your kids to understand and experience, not be told, experience the value of hard work.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you're giving them more than anything else that you could possibly give them to live their life in a responsible way, and to keep them teachable, to keep them, you know,
And when it gets hard, don't quit.
yeah, no,
Keep
at
going.
all. Right.
It's, it's kind of that pursuit, but
Yeah, we have a saying: "Be faithful in the pursuit. You trust God with the outcome."
no, it's great. Well, I will say too, on pillar number 4, as we were writing these out, we did these 5 pillars, and so on number 4 is humility and teachability, and I know that it's been a big element of your life, but even talking about, last year was the year of teachability for you, that you're not gonna when you stepped into 60s, you want to be more teachable, which comes from a place of humility, is willing to learn, willing to to be shaped and molded even at an age, even when you've already experienced success. That's the secret sauce. But also, even on the teachability side, we talked about best yes being this year. So, so saying
it's a lot easier said than done.
Yes. As our team has seen, we've been trying to create some policies to be able just to help in there's so many people that pull on you for so many different things, but really, that's honestly, Proverbs 12, it talks about whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. And, this one in particular, the teachability is something that I've been working on, comes out of James 1:9, the be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. I'm like, man, the amount of times trying to teach into something that you were good at is whenever, maybe not the slow to become angry, because if we did something you may get mad. But
No, you had immediate feedback.
I got immediate feedback, but it's something that I'll find myself doing. But what I didn't do that you did so well is you always came back and apologized, and always came back and said, and it helped. It showed me what a man of God looks like, and it showed the humility aspect. And so, you can't truly walk out being a man of God without that humility and teachability.
Yeah, humility. Humility to me was best defined years ago is simply agreeing with God, and I think that you've got to focus on what God says, what God sees. False humility is kind of the height of arrogance, really is, and so humility is, putting other people ahead of you, being, open-handed. I think being teachable. You said it. You have to be humble. You have to humble yourself. I wouldn't say more difficult, but one of the things that was been eye-opening for me over the last several years as I've gotten older is I made a commitment. I'm not going to be the old man in the room that's looking like he's mad every day. Like, I want to be life-giving. Yeah. I want to be and so what I'm learning from people that are younger than me. I'm learning even from people that haven't done what I've done. They haven't accomplished those same things. And so I could say, and be closed off of like, you haven't arrived yet, but you know what? I can glean from them, their story, what they do, their journey, and or their ideas. And so really even empowering some of the teams that I'm involved in, of saying, you know what, I'm not going to dictate this. You guys come up with ideas. And you know what, when you empower people, it's amazing to see what you can learn from them.
No, it's so good. So good. I know we're running up on our time, so really wanted to share kind of our last and final pillar. And, it's talking about, as a man of God, we're called to love, but we're called to express that through action. Mm-hmm. It's our job to lead. It's our job to do these certain things and to show up, to be consistent in what God's given us. Consistency. There's that saying with the cherry tree. Hey, John Maxwell says it all the time. He goes, if I pick up an axe and take 5 swings at this tree every single day, eventually it'll fall. It's the consistency of which that you do it to make that tree in your life fall. But it leads to empathy. It leads to, it loves sacrificially. Have this quote right here, when it talks about biblical masculinity, it's strong enough, biblical masculinity is strong enough to serve and secure enough to love. And so, there's different ways to even go about it. But how have you seen, I know you have tons of stories, and I know Coach Mack was a pillar in your life in many different areas, and was a spiritual father to you, and he's helped shape you in what a man of God looks like in
Yeah, I would
different
say
ways.
him, Bill McCartney, Curry Juno, and Bill Mays.
How have you seen the way, those guys? I mean, you've shared stories on the podcast before about Pastor Curry meeting you at your house. He expressed his love through action to be at your house at in the middle of the night, to waiting on the front door for you coming back, telling you that this is not who you are.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of things like that. But if you had to describe it up to people that are wrestling with that thought of what does it look like through the action of how you're expressing.
Yeah, I don't think words have an element of impact, but it's really action and follow through that makes the difference. I think it's what gives you authority. I always have a saying. I was talking to a young business leader on an earlier Zoom call today for the first time. He wanted me to come on this podcast, and normally I would have said no. And but there was just something about him that I was like, you know what? I think it was the best yes.
Yeah.
He can't do anything for me. Nothing. I don't want anything from him. But it was just like a moment. It was like, you know what? That's a best yes. And I've committed, as you've said, that I want best yeses. And it doesn't matter the size of the event, if a remuneration or something given or any of that. It's all irrelevant. Is it a best yes? And so for me, taking action, and to me, when you say best yes, but I told him, I said, when you give away what you have learned, there is value. Okay? It's value. As a parent, you give away what you've learned, there's value to your kids. Maybe you learned it from somewhere else, you read it in a book, but when you've lived it, it has authority.
Yep.
And when you've lived it, living it is action. Living it is taking the steps. Learning it has a level of value. Okay? Oh, I'm going to love you. Well, I can tell you I love you, but unless I show you in action, it's not going to have the same depth. I'm not going to be an authority on love unless I've actually applied it.
Yep.
I can teach it all day long, but unless I'm actually applying it. So the power is in the application, not just the thought, not just the word. It's in the application. And so I have to do that. And that's a choice that I've got to make every single day. And so I choose. I used to pray in the early years, being married, your mom's incredible woman. But I couldn't love her like she needed to be loved. And my prayer, what set me free one day is I started praying, God, help me to love Laura the way you love her. Help me to see her as you see her. And God started to do a work in that because I'm incapable of meeting all of her needs.
Yep.
Only God can do that. But I had to see her as he does. And something happened even inside my heart. And so, but there's got to be action beyond what you're just saying.
Gotta apply it.
Yeah, gotta apply it. So the power is in the application.
No, that's so good. No, we see that in different areas. And honest to our listeners, it'd be great to take some reflection time after this to say, all right, what areas do I need to grow in strength and humility? What areas do I even need to go? Like I thought about, I had to do this with my own wife. I had to go ask for forgiveness because I haven't been a spiritual leader in my household. And I said, hey, I want to apologize for dancing around and doing, oh, Lord, bless the food, pray for this. And like there's times where it was more case driven. If a child was sick or if my wife was going through some health issues, or Sam, she's our student pastor at Highlands now. And so praying over her before she speak, it was more, but not consistently. It wasn't consistent. And I'll never forget when I sat down and I held her hands and I apologized to her. And she started just crying, and she's like, she goes, you have no idea what that does for me and the security that brings for me.
Because you know what though, Harrison? Every single one of us, me included, every single person listening right now deals with that.
Yep.
And so the key is not wallowing in it. The key is taking a step of saying, you know what, today I'm going to own that.
Yep.
It stops with me. I'm going to own that. And there's so much power in going to your spouse or your kids or those you love and simply owning it and saying, you know what, I blew that, but that changes. That's not who I am. And I'm committing today that I'm going to be. And so it's just owning it. And so a great exercise for everyone that's listening to this, if you're a spouse or a parent or a young person, maybe you need to ask forgiveness to your own parents or whoever it is, business partners, whatever, but just own it and move forward. And there's going to be a security that comes in those relationships, and it's going to be a beautiful thing, and you're going to watch as God moves in a massive way. And you know what's going to happen? Faith is going to rise. Courage is going to come through the roof, and we're going to be able to exhibit what a true masculine man of God or woman of God. I don't know if we call them masculine women of God, but yeah.
However you would appropriately say that.
However you do that. And so to be able to say, but to be the man or woman of God that they're supposed to be.
No, that's so good. And on the next, that's why you'll hear, Kingdom Builders is so focused on the local church. So that's why you'll even hear as we're talking, like you need other men of God in your life. I have a handful of guys in my life. I just got off the phone with one of them where they'll challenge me, they'll help me, they'll grow me. And because I'm not doing this alone. And if there's certain things, hey, help me. Hey, check on me on this. And so the importance of that. And guys, I just want to say to everyone listening, if our heart is for you to not be convicted or, to not struggle with it, but to be challenged, and that God has so much more. And so God's not looking for perfect men. That's why I believe he references all these guys in the Bible.
That's right.
But he's looking for faithful ones. And when you're faithful, it leads to fruitfulness in your life. So whatever God has in store, if we trust him, we believe in him, that he hears our prayers, that, we have whatever it is we ask. So really just want to affirm you. And is there anything, as we're about to close out, any last words, any last things?
As you said, God's not looking for perfection. He wants intentionality and faithfulness. Men who stand when it's hard, serve when it's costly. He's looking for men who will lead when it really matters. And I think we're at a time where it really matters. And I wrote this down, and I said, and when men lead like that, families are strengthened, businesses are blessed, and the kingdom advances.
So good. And for those that are listening that heard this and didn't get a chance to hear last month's podcast on that, on taking heart, on being courageous, on getting to do this, you can go back and look in. Really, if you need that extra boost of courage as you step in to being the man of God that he's called you to be in 2026 and beyond, because your family, your children, your future legacy will thank you for it when they're sitting at 60 years old and looking back. How different the life could have been. So want to thank you for listening to this month's podcast. If you liked this episode, feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you next time. See you next month. Thanks for tuning in to the Kingdom Builder Podcast with Lee Domingue. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to live out your calling, impact others, and build God's kingdom in powerful ways. Stay connected with us for more stories of generosity and purpose, and visit kingdombuilders.us for more resources to help you grow as a kingdom builder. Until next time, keep living with purpose and advancing the kingdom.